Thank you. Please be seated. The scripture reading today comes from the Old Testament, from the prophet Jeremiah. And if you need a visual for the prophet Jeremiah, try to picture Louis Black, the comedian, who always sounds like he's really angry about something, but he's really trying to make a point in the middle of his anger, and this would be the prophet Jeremiah, as if people would go down to the local club on a Friday night to hear the prophet Jeremiah. And this is God speaking through the prophet. This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Go down to the potter's house, and there I will give you my message. So I went down to the potter's house, and I saw him working at the wheel. But the pot that he was shaping from the clay was marred in his hands. So he formed it into another pot, shaping it as seemed best to him. Then the word of the Lord came to me. He said, Can I not do with you, Israel, as this potter does, declares the Lord? Like the clay in the hand of the potter, so are you in my hand, Israel. If at any time I announce that the nation or a kingdom is to be uprooted, torn down, destroyed, and that the nation I warned repents of its evil, I will relent and not inflict the disaster I had planned. And if at another time I announce that a nation or a kingdom is to be built up and planted, and it does evil in my sight and does not obey me, then I will reconsider the good that I had intended to do for it. The old man looked like someone's grandfather as he quietly sat at the wheel of the potter, and she stared at his hands and the clay and the water. She had come there to ask his advice. She said, Sometimes I feel like the color beige, like a bowl of oatmeal or a dark, empty stage. It's like my whole life is just a blank, empty page. So I came here to ask your advice. I mean, did you feel like this when you were like me, right at the beginning of all that could be, but you couldn't get started and you couldn't quite see what your life was really about? But the potter was silent and stared at the wheel, and her anger boiled up, and it was like he could feel the pain in her heart that she tried to conceal, but her hands kept clenching into fists. Well, the wheel kept on turning the way it will go, and the lump in his hands, it started to grow. He said, Why are you asking what you already know? Don't you know how amazing you are? There's just one creator, and he knows what to do. Listen to my words, girl. Know that they're true. He made the grass green. He made the sky blue. There's some things you need to do for yourself. This clay is soft, but given the time, I can work with it slowly with these old hands of mine, and I can make me a vase or a jug for my wine. But you see, girl, it's all up to me. You've been given this life. It's already amazing. You can study your books or spend it stargazing. You can go out on the road and spend it hell-raising. But you see, girl, it's all up to you. But I tell you right now, there are people backstage who see your empty canvas. They see your blank page. And they'll come out here with paint and mud and buckets of rage. And they'll tell you who they think you are. They'll push you and mold you like the clay on this wheel, and they won't care a jot about how you might feel. I promise you, girl, it's your soul they will steal. But you won't let them have it. Will you? You better define yourself before someone else does. They follow you around, they start flapping their jaws, but you don't have to listen to them, girl, because the Creator left it all up to you. And don't go around blaming your mommy or your dad or your sister who's pretty or your brother the grad, because they all had the same choices you know that you had. It's your life, girl, not anyone else's. And she looked down inside, deeper than she could remember, down where the fire had grown cold as December, and she saw a small spark, a dim glowing ember. She quietly gave it a blow. And that one tiny coal started to glow, and it made a small flame that started to grow, and then it was a bonfire, and then a volcano, and she knew it was just getting started. It was a note, and then a song, and then a full symphony, backed up by a storm on the crashing blue sea, and she kept it all in her heart, right where it should be. And she turned to the old man, and she said, I am a dancer or a poet or a great engineer. I can build you a building or quote you Shakespeare, and I have no time for those who would fill me with fear. I know now it's all up to me, and I am not a bug, I'm not a mug or a bowl on your wheel. I am the wheel itself, and I know what I feel. I am creating myself. Now here's the deal. I'm ready to define myself. The image of God as a potter has always been one of my personal favorites. That's why I love this verse so much, that God is the potter and we are the clay. You know, I imagine God sometimes with the apron tied around his waist this way and his hair pulled back into a ponytail and mud or clay here from when he was working on something and the hair falls in his face and he brushes it out this way and you just have God with this big streak of clay across his forehead. I love that image. More than movies, more than the books, more than Sunday school, or the images of God we get in song. It's just God as a potter, God with clay under his fingernails. And in the book of Genesis, there are two creation stories in the book of Genesis. And the second one has the line that I like about man and woman created he them. But that first story has that image of God down on his knees in the mud, forming Adam out of the mud with his hands, then breathing into Adam's nostrils, and Adam comes alive. God is this creator, the potter, making stuff out of clay. Most of the images we have of God, most of our sense of God, heaven, and it comes from a three-tiered vision of the universe. And we've talked about this in youth group sometimes, where it's God is up here, hell and damnation and pain and death are down below, and then we're in the middle somewhere. And that was how the people who wrote the Bible, who had no concept that the earth was even round, wrote about things. They wrote, God is up here and God comes down. Elijah was taken up. Our prayers go up, blessings come down. It was that idea that God is somewhere up here. And then somewhere along the way, we got this image. That's 1946, the very first image of Earth taken from orbit. It's a Russian photograph. We went up, and where's God? We go up. We're supposed to be up there. Then in 1969, we had this one. That's the classic, the one that everybody knows, taken by from a NASA spaceship. And it was, okay, now if we're here and God is up and we go up and there's nothing there. Okay, now what do we do? We have this idea that God is supposed to be somewhere off there, somewhere God in the distance, and God has to come here. We used to pray what was called the prayer of invocation, as if we had to invoke the presence of God, and have God, but even then, it's God is out there. That's why I like the idea of God as the potter, because God has to be this close. I wrote a lesson once for younger Sunday school kids, which they were given a ball of Play-Doh on a plate and told they could make anything they wanted, but they couldn't touch it. You had to mold it with your mind. And you do that for youth, and youth look at you like you're, what? But if you do it for little kids, they try. They'll sit there and go, just as hard as they come. And nothing happens, but then you say, okay, now put your hands on it, make what you want, and they're in there, and they're squeezing, and they're having fun. Now, we're making something. I love the idea that God has clay under his fingernails. God is that close. In the book of Exodus, when Moses is talking to God, and Moses says to God, if I have to go and do this for you, who do I tell them sent me? And God says, tell them I am. That's not an answer. It's one of those ones where you keep asking God stuff and God never quite answers the question all the way. Tell them I am sent you. In the English translation, it will also say, the Lord sent you. Tell them the Lord. But in the Hebrew, it's 4 letters. YHVH. Now, Hebrew is often referred to as the language of coughing and spitting. It's when you're trying, it has that definite phlegm thing that you're trying. And in the written Hebrew alphabet, there are no vowels. These 4 letters, YHVH, is as close as you can come to a vowel in the Hebrew alphabet, and they're spoken in a breath. Yah, ho, va, hey. Yah, hey, va, hey. God is as close as our breath. Yah, ho, va, hey. It's where we also get the word Jehovah. It's also where we get the word Java, which means God is coffee. I made that up. That's not true. It sounded really good, though, didn't it? It's like, wow, really? Yeah. No. God is as close as our breath. God is the sculptor. God is the potter. I can't wait to see the finished sculpture that Barton has been working on. I just can't wait. You can go and look at the sculpture of David and then see the knockoff in the gift shop. And it's like, well, it's the same sculpture. No, it isn't. There is life in this one. The sculptor said, I saw David in the rock already, and I just set him free. The idea that life is already there. I am a huge fan of Sesame Street. I still watch it. I absolutely love that show. I have since I was old enough to even appreciate what's going on. And Ernie is the coolest Muppet that there ever was. Don't argue with me, you will lose. Ernie is the most awesome puppet. And I was looking for a picture of Ernie online for some other project that I was working on. And there's all these pictures you can find, and you can see the ones where Jim Henson was actually working the puppet, and the ones where somebody just posed a doll or a puppet to get a photograph of it. You can see the life in the Muppet, in the piece of felt that suddenly becomes alive. There are a couple of verses we use for mission trips with the youth group, and both of them are from Paul, Philippians, and Corinthians, but the idea of the verses is that this is a partnership. That from the moment of creation, the moment from when there was nothing to the moment when there was everything, that creation moment is still going on. The creation never ended. It's still happening. And Paul says the creation is happening in partnership with us. God is creating. It's like the clay has a say in what it's becoming. It's the statue where David already exists inside the stone and the sculptor just set it free. The creation is still going on, and it's going on in you. Jesus said to his disciples that I am in God, and God is in me, and I am in you, and you are in me, and God is in you. And it almost sounds like Dr. Seuss for a second there, didn't it? It was like, I am in you, and you are in me, and we are in they, and when we are thee, and when we're together, how happy we'll be. It could be a great Dr. Seuss story, but it's Jesus trying to say, I am here. I am in you. I am part of who you are. God is part of who you are. We are all in this together. Jesus tells the story about the king who separates his people into 2 groups and says, you over here, when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was lonely, you visited me, and when I was thirsty, you gave me drink, and when I was cold, you gave me a blanket. And they said, when did we do that? And Jesus said, when you did it for the least of my brothers, the least of me, the least of us. When you did it for somebody else, then you were doing it for me, because God is in all of us. Jesus is in all of us, especially the broken and the grieving and the hungry and the lonely. Jesus is all part of this. And when we do things for each other, for those people, we're doing it as part of God. Paul says that God, it is the God in whom we live and breathe and have our being. When we believe that Jesus is in all of us, there can be no labels. We can't label each other if we're looking at each other as if we were all part of God. When something happens, we all grieve. When the Pulse shooting happened, this congregation grieved like nothing I have ever seen before, because when something happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. I got a round of applause because my dad is moving back into his house. When somebody celebrates, we all celebrate because we are all part of God. There is a oneness that happens, a oneness that occurs. I'm going to show you like 10 seconds of a video, and we get the picture in your head of the solar system, like the one you had when you were in science fair in high school. You had the styrofoam ball, and that's the sun, and then you had the coat hangers, and sometimes they spun around, or you drew it on the wall. This is the solar system, and that's the one we've always thought of. It's way out there. It's distant. It's the solar system. It's one static image, but it isn't. Solar system is moving through the universe on the arm of a spiral galaxy at 1,000,000 miles a minute, with the planets whisking around it all at the same time. Show this video. I loved this. Look at this. God is not the distant being out there who doesn't show up. God is here now. God is this energy pushing us forward, drawing us together, and we move through the universe together. We move through life together as one people. I'm going to teach you a new word. I'm going to mispronounce it so then you can mispronounce it too. Perichoresis. Say perichoresis. Let's try that again. Perichoresis. This is where we also get the word choreography, but it means the beings that are God dancing around each other. The beings that make up God dancing around each other. God is part of us, driving us forward, not something distant that has to be beckoned or prayed, please come here. No, God is already here. Jesus said, I'm coming here so that I can wake you up to that fact. The closest we can get to the idea of Jesus being part of us, the closest we can get to the energy that is God, that is inside us all and driving us forward and taking us to new places, is this, communion. I'm going to ask my friend Dave will come up. We're going to take communion.